Hey guys, the Firebird is here. So, I don't know if you know this, but lately there's been a trend on YouTube of creating iceberg videos. And basically the gist of it is that you create an image filled with random facts, the most common facts go at the top, and the more obscure and disturbing ones go at the very bottom. Henceforth why it's called an iceberg. There has been a lot of these for several different topics, some which I checked out like Dragon Ball, SCP, Godzilla, and so on. But when it comes to Transformers Icebergs videos on YouTube, there hasn't been a whole lot of them. Well, there are, but most of them are in Spanish. So this will sort of make me the first one that's in English, maybe, probably, I don't know. But since not a lot of people are doing it, I thought of doing some icebergs, because Transformers has quite a few icebergs, which some people have made for the franchise. Of course, some of these are on Reddit, so yeah. For the most part, these ones are pretty interesting, and I'm sure there's a thing or two that you previously didn't know about. So, in this video, I'll be covering the movie Iceberg. I'm gonna go in it blind, but if I do see something that I don't know about, then I'm gonna, mention it, and I'm gonna tell you what it's all about. Today's iceberg is gonna be solely covering the movies, which I think it's a good way to start this potentially small mini-series, since I know most of my viewership likes the Transformers movies, so it's at least here for the movies. But if you guys like this, then I can always go and do other icebergs for other Transformers media, like Prime, the comics, and so on. I found so much more, and I feel like a lot of these topics are gonna merit their own video. So if there's anything here that you want me to talk more in depth about, let me know in the comments down below, and I might make some of these categories into their own separate video. Anyways, we begin with level 1. The sky, the most common things. First up, we got Megan Fox. Now, Megan Fox is the actress that plays Mikaela in the first 2 Transformers movies, and she got fired because she basically insulted Michael Bay, and she didn't like how he handled things, and honestly, I can't really blame her. Next up, we got product placement. Now, the Transformers movies are notorious for product placement, and if you don't know what product placement is, it's basically putting a certain brand or product into a certain piece of media to promote it. Think of it like the Burger King ads or the Camaro cars. Bumblebee's a Camaro, and we see the Camaro symbol every time he's on screen. Haha, enemy Squirtle, that's pretty self-explanatory, and also I love the phrasing for that. He's talking about the time Devastator's balls are seen on screen, and Michael Bay thought that was funny. Shia LaBeouf. Do it! Yeah, that's basically it. He's also the guy who plays Sam, and the mad lad who created the greatest game of Capture the Flag of all time. My biggest regret about Joe Biden winning is that we won't get it Capture the Flag Part 8. Michael Bay. Michael Bay is the director of the Transformers movies. He's, for the most part, responsible for a lot of the stuff we see on screen. Explosions, scantily clad women, lack of robot action, and really weird Squirtle humor. Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime's leader of the Autobots in the movies. Overall, movie Optimus Prime is kind of a controversial figure in the Transformers community because he's very violent, but we'll get more into that as we go down. Bumblebee is arguably the most popular character in the franchise. Movie Bumblebee popularized Bumblebee more than any of the other Transformers continuities prior to him. Bumblebee is like the Pikachu of Transformers. The amount of toys he has, it's so astronomically high that the DF Wiki has a whole separate section for how many toys Bumblebee gets. Sam's parents. Yeah, they're Sam's parents and they don't really matter in the film. Moving on, explosions. Michael Bay is notorious for the amount of explosions he adds in his film. Even some of the background footage you're seeing right now, which is probably gonna be from the movies itself, you can see there's an explosion here, an explosion there, an explosion everywhere. Michael Bay loves explosions. John Turturro. John Turturro is actually one of the script writers for the Transformers movies. He's also a writer, producer, and director. Alice Pretender, what he means by that is that Alice, the chick that we see in Revenge of the Fallen, is actually a pretender, a Transformers that can take the disguise of a human form. And we do see her on the film, and she ends up getting killed in that one. Megatron. Megatron's arguably the character that changes the most throughout all the movies. In every movie he appears in, Megatron always looks different, but he's like the recurring villain of all the live action movies. Okay, now we're in the tip of the iceberg. We're still not quite in obscure territory, but we're getting close to the bottom. Give me your face is the ever so quotable quote that Optimus Prime says when killing the Fallen. It's violent, brutal, and it's often used in a mocking way to make fun of or criticize the movie Optimus Prime for how violent he is. Steve Jablonski. I love this man. This is the guy who produces the music for the Transformers movies, and say what you want about the movies, but we can all agree that the Transformers movies have some amazing OST. Lockdown's Team, the Dinobot Charge, Dark of the Moon, the first Transformers movie. I really do hope he comes back for the reboot. I want 2 pieces. This is the ever infamous quote that Megatron says when killing Jazz. You can probably put this on Google and find a whole bunch of memes centered around this one sentence. Rendering Devastator caused the computer to catch on fire. Now this is actually one that's true and it's fairly well known. Devastator was so big, like scale wise, that when the Transformers 2 production team tried to render his scenes, their computers will crash. And I remember this vividly because I watched some behind the scenes when I was a kid, and that was one of the details that stood out to me the most. Murder Prime. Going back to what I said earlier, Murder Prime is a derogatory term given to the movie Optimus Prime, often in critique of how violent he is. Optimus Prime in the movies is very violent, and the way he executes his enemies is very often over the top, and he applies an unnecessary bit of, cruelty to his executions. Left cheek. Oh, okay, so left cheek refers to that part in the first Transformers movie where Lennox was telling Abs where was his communicator so they can call for backup, and like Lennox was looking all over him, and then Abs replies with left cheek, and Lennox finds it in his left ass cheek and calls for reinforcements. I can't believe I forgot about that. Jeez, I'm getting old. It's Skits and Muffler controversy. Now there's one that's fairly well known. Skits and Muffler were deemed to be kind of racist, have racist undertones to them, which not to compare to nowadays where everyone says, oh, everything's racist, everything's sex. No, I feel like Skits and Muffler were somewhat justifiably called out for being that, and we all know how Michael Bay is with his stereotypes and stuff, so that caused Skits and Muffler to be cut from Dark of the Moon. Bumblebee's a reboot. Now, Bumblebee is, much like the title suggests, a reboot movie. But we didn't always know this. For the longest time, there was a massive debate within the fanbase whether the Bumblebee movie was in itself a reboot or a prequel to the Michael Bay movies. Until much later, after the Bumblebee movie got released, we finally got official confirmation that the Bumblebee movie is in fact a reboot. Writer's strike. Now this is the thing that crippled Revenge of the Fallen, because Revenge of the Fallen, the reason why it turned out the way it did and why it was pretty bad in terms of story is because the writer's strike happened. Basically, a bunch of writers said they weren't being paying enough, so they went on strike, which caused the script for the movie to be made in a short amount of time with what little people they had left. So the writer's strike itself is what probably crippled the Transformers movies, at least more so Revenge of the Fallen than any other. Industrial Light and Magic. Now these are the guys who usually made the, effects for the Transformers movies, even produced some concept art. I'm pretty sure they've done this for like all the Transformers movies, even well into the Bumblebee movies, so they're actually really good on what they do. Now we're on level 3, we're underwater, but we're still not too far out from the surface. From here on out, we're gonna start seeing some more details that, are probably less well known. Blackout versus Grinder. Now, this refers to a common debate about Blackout and Grinder being two separate people, which they are, but back in the day, we didn't know that, so people just assumed that Blackout was revived somehow. Which leads to some people pointing out the difference between the two of them, or even very unfunny YouTubers like myself making jokes that all Transformers look the same. Deleted Megatron in Bumblebee. Now this is one that's really well known and very infamous because Megatron was originally supposed to be in the Bumblebee movie. We have some reports of people who got to see some early screenings of the Bumblebee movie that they in fact saw Megatron in there, and looking more G1. We don't know if a deleted Megatron scene actually exists or it's out there or if it's ever gonna be released, but we do know that for a fact Megatron was supposed to be in the B movie. Digbot the Blender guy. I wish I was joking, but that's referring to the kitchen bot, Digbot the Blender guy, who has a very inappropriate, bodily attachment, let's just say that. Barricades disappearances. This is fairly common and this is fairly well known for anyone who's a movie fan. Barricade has the weird tendency to disappear. In the first movie, he disappeared after taking a wrong turn in the highway. In Dark of the Moon, he disappeared after having his head blown off and somehow didn't die. And in The Last Night, he just disappeared after the bad guys were about to win. So it's a common joke that has even made onto other continuities, like the Siege and Earthrise continuity, where Barricade does in fact disappear again. IDW Comics. This is one that's also not that well known because people don't seem to know that there's actually IDW movie tie-in comics that fill in the gaps between the movies and in some occasions even improve the storylines. I actually highly recommend them because they're really good. Earlier designs in promotional renders. When promoting the movie, character designs usually look a bit weird or different from the final product. This has happened especially with the first movie, where characters looked a certain way in the movie they look completely different. Novels. The Transformers movies has plenty of novels that fill in the gaps between each movie. There's the Ghost of Yesterday, the Veiled Dread, and plenty more. They're actually pretty well made, so if you ever find one, I recommend getting them. Bumblebee's unused electric stingers. Much like this suggests, originally Bumblebee was intended to have some electric stingers. You can actually find some concept art for this if you search hard enough, but there's not that plenty. It seems to be an idea that was scrapped pretty early on. Original Megatron head could be referring to a lot of things, but personally I think this is referring to the different concept arts that were about Megatron's head. He has plenty, some of them look very weird, and other ones look a bit more decent. I don't know if this is talking about one specific head in particular, but hey, whatever. Now, Barry gets erroneous Soundwave voice. I'm pretty sure this is referring to when in Dark of the Moon when he executes Wheeljack. Barricade kinda sounds like Soundwave in there. I don't know if that was a bit of a mix-up or whatever, but that actually got some fans confused, making them think that it was Soundwave who killed Wheeljack, when in reality it was Barricade who sounded like Soundwave for a second. Alternate Nitro Suits lines. Now this is one that shockingly not a lot of people know, but depending on which version you watch of Transformers The Last Night, like if you watch theatrical or Blu-ray, Nitro Suits has different lines. He says some extra lines in some of his scenes or when he's off screen. It's not by much, there's not that many like alternate lines, but for some reason the lines change depending on which version you watch. Sentinel Prime was mentioned in Revenge of the Fallen. Now this one's actually true. In Revenge of the Fallen, when Sam's under the possession of the Allspark and he's having that spaz out in college, he basically name drops Sentinel Prime, which is a small detail that a lot of people miss. Demolisher versus Scavenger. This is referring to these two different characters that have the same mold and look pretty much the same in the movies. Well, we never saw Scavenger transform, but he did make it into Studio Series and we can see that he looks exactly the same as Demolisher. So people are often confused if these two are supposed to be the same character, if Demolisher actually survived his encounter with the Autobots and later rejoined the Decepticons to form Devastator, but in reality no, these are two separate characters. And the same thing applies with the next one, Rampage versus Skipjack. These two characters, again, they look pretty much the same. There's one that fights Bumblebee and there's one that combines into Devastator. People often get confused since, you know, they both look the same with minor differences, but in reality they're two separate characters. The original creators refers to in Age of Extinction. When we see the creators briefly, we see that they have this weird techno-organic look to it, like their arm has some organic components. But in The Last Night, when we actually see Quintessa, who apparently is the creators plural, she doesn't have any organic parts to her, she's fully mechanized. Which has led to a lot of people believing that originally the creators were supposed to look and be completely different than what they turned out being in The Last Night. Which this is true, originally the Quintessons were actually supposed to appear in the film. Joel was last minute, yep, this is true. The reason why Joel has so little screen time in Revenge of the Fallen and why we barely see him is because he was a last minute addition to the cast, mostly as a plot device to fuse Jetfire with Optimus Prime. Now we're in the mid-section of the bottom of the iceberg. Now we're gonna start seeing some very obscure stuff, but we're not quite delving into the darkness that is the movies. Revenge of the Fallen Breakaway. Now I covered this before in a video talking about the missing character from Revenge of the Fallen Breakaway, and originally he was supposed to be in the movie. He made an appearance in the Transformers Revenge of the Fallen the game, but he was cut because I guess he was too expensive. Original Dark of the Moon ending. Now, if you read the comics, you actually get to see the original ending for Dark of the Moon. Originally, supposedly, Optimus Prime and Megatron teamed up against Sentinel Prime, and after they managed to deal with him, Megatron proposes a truce to Optimus, so Megatron and the Decepticons can go and rebuild Cybertron, which it's left ambiguous whether Optimus Prime accepts or not, but supposedly he does, and Megatron and his Decepticons basically just drop everything and decide to form a truce to rebuild Cybertron, something like that. Dark of the Moon Warpath. Now this is one that we don't know if Warpath was in fact gonna be in Dark of the Moon. He does appear in the Dark of the Moon the game and has concept art, but His appearance in the game has led many people to believe if whether or not we're gonna see Warpath make an appearance in Dark of the Moon, but unfortunately, we never do. Thundercracker was in Dark of the Moon. Now, this is one that has been speculated and one that we don't know if it's completely true or not. I can make a video about it if you guys want, like I said earlier. I can make a video for a whole lot of these ones, but the Studio Series backdrop for Thundercracker heavily implies that Thundercracker was present at the Battle of Chicago. And we do know for a fact that the Seekers, Thundercracker, Skywarp, and so on do exist in the Babe universe. So this is one that might actually be true. Revenge the Fallen Leader Optimus's collapsible wheels. I'm guessing this means that the Revenge the Fallen Leader Optimus Prime was defective with his wheels, which it wouldn't be something too uncommon because sometimes that happens with certain Transformers figures. Just look at Studio Series Bumblebee. I honestly don't know much about this one, and if you know more about it or if I'm wrong about something, let me know in the comments down below. Overlord was supposed to be in TLK. Now, this is referring to a concept art that looks an awful lot like Overlord, so people speculated that Overlord was probably one of the Decepticons that we were meant to see be imprisoned by the humans in TLK, but unfortunately that never came to pass. RC Sisters Collective Consciousness. Now, this is one that a lot of people get confused about because it's kind of complicated, but the RC Sisters in the movies share a collective consciousness. This is also emphasized more in the comics, where it's said that Elita 1 and Chromia ended up dying pretty early on in the war, but a Decepticon scientist revived them by sharing RC's spark with them, with the side effect being that they share a collective consciousness. They can see, feel, and understand what the other one does, thinks, or it's about to do. It's kind of disturbing the more you think about it and the more you look into it with the comics and some novels, but this is something that is in fact true. Bumblebee's legs are backwards. I don't really know what this is referring to specifically. This guy wasn't very specific. I'm guessing that, like it also suggests, Bumblebee's legs were backwards, maybe at one point in the film by a mistake or something. Or is he just making fun of the way Bumblebee's legs look? If anyone can clarify this one, please let me know. Dark of the Moon BK Shockwave vs Optimus. Now, this is one that I was planning to make a video on someday, and a trailer, well, a small commercial exists where we actually see an extended Shockwave vs Optimus Prime fight scene, which it's used in a Burger King promotional commercial. Because of course it is. This implies that originally the Shockwave vs Optimus Prime encounter was supposed to be a tad bit longer, but this was likely changed to cut on some of the movie runtime. Mudflap's license plate variant is referring to the Mudflap toy, which if you look at the license plate on the back of the toy, sometimes it has a different variant to what it's normally supposed to have. Sometimes it says Mudflap, sometimes it says another thing. This is something that Hasbro does sometimes, where they change some things unnecessarily, creating variants of certain figures. Unused Sonic The Last Night Barricaded Bumblebee fight. This is one that's very well known because it's fairly recent, and for the Sonic brand of food there was a small commercial where we saw Bumblebee versus Barricade, which led a lot of people to believe that we were gonna get an extended fight for that in the movie, but unfortunately that never happened. Sideways was almost Barricade. Now this is talking about how Sideways and Barricade actually do look quite alike, and that led to some people speculating that originally in Revenge the Fallen, Barricade was supposed to be the one that gets killed and not Sideways, just to tie on some loose ends from the first movie. But eventually they just changed it to Sideways being his own entity as opposed to being Barricade. Skits and Mudflap's dead in Dark of the Moon. This one's actually one that's true and that quite a few people know about, but if you look at the comics, Skits and Mudflap actually do die in the in-between of Ironhide getting killed by Sentinel Prime and Bumblebee running away from him. They actually leap on to defend Bumblebee, but then Skits ends up getting killed and then Mudflap, which explains what happened to them and why we don't see them, anywhere else after that. Okay, I don't know what Julian K dead to Analog could mean. From what I've seen, it seems to be something involved with Linkin Park. I'm guessing they're like the guys who do it. We're supposed to record some music for the Transformers movies, I guess. Their song Dead to Analog was supposed to be in it, I guess, something like that. I don't know, this one's kind of weird. Now we are nearing the deepest bottom of the ocean. Here's where we start getting some of the more obscure stuff, and here's where things start getting a bit dark in some places, so this is where the fun begins. Obi-Wan as the Fallen. Now this is in reference as to how James Arnold Taylor, aka Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Clone Wars, voices the Fallen in most time media including the games, and was actually going to be the voice of him in the film, so that's kinda cool I guess. Car Dropkick replaces Dino. This is referring to how there was a Studio Series listing of Dino back in 2019. Later on, that listing was replaced with one of Car Dropkick, pretty much hinting that it had been cancelled. But that was mostly because Dino was in production hell for the longest time until we finally got a figure of him recently. Starscream's head was originally Megatron's. Now this was actually true. Originally there were plans to make Starscream's head be Megatron's head until that was scrapped and changed, which I'm glad they did that because Megatron looking like this with Starscream's head looks weird. It looks very, very weird. Emperor Palpatine is Jetfire. Much like I said with the whole Obi-Wan as the Fallen thing, the original guy who, you know, voiced Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars movies also voices Jetfire in most tie-in material like games and so on. Shockwave killed Jolt and Elita 1. Now this one's actually true, and I talked about this a couple of times in my channel, and if you've been here you probably know about. In the IDW comics, during the in-between Revenge of the Fallen and Dark of the Moon, Shockwave not only kills Joel, the leader one, but also kills a whole bunch of Autobots, which is why in Dark of the Moon we don't see that many in comparison to Revenge of the Fallen, where their numbers exponentially increase because most of them die at the hands of Shockwave. That actually ties into the Optimus Prime rage scene, because his rage is not only because he needs, you know, to kill the Decepticons and save the Earth, but because it's personal for him when he's killing Shockwave. Mirage was revealing to Dino, Wheeljack was revealing to Q. Now this one's actually true. In the IDW comics, Mirage and Wheeljack are some of the very few Autobots who actually do survive Shockwave's rampage. Ratchet finds their bodies and manages to rebuild them to save their lives. The third twin is in reference to concept art that indicates to the fact that there was going to be a third twin. It's very early concept art, but this is in fact true. Tyrant 609.23px Kappa refers to this alternate universe where the whole multiversal sideways theories / speculated facts originates from. It's said that the native sideways have multiple incarnations, one of which made their way into several older continuities like animated, the movies and so on. SS Scavenger was almost Commander class. Now much like the title suggests, SS Scavenger was originally planned to be Commander class because he's one of those big Transformers, so he was planned to be, you know, be made taller, but that was scrapped and he was just kept as leader class. The original movie Lockdown. This is referring to the original version of Lockdown that existed prior to Age of Extinction. In the comics and the Revenge of the Fallen toy line, there was a Lockdown figure that looked very closely to his animated counterpart, so I'm guessing this is referring to that version of Lockdown in particular. PSP Hound. Long before Age of Extinction, there was a version of Hound that existed exclusively in the PSP game. You can actually see his design. He looks more G1 accurate than Age of Extinction Hound ever does. Barricading the Bowie movie. Now that is a very infamous one and that a lot of people seem to have just forgotten about, but there was a police car leak on the set, but also the voice of Barricade at one point confirmed that he was going to be said to be in the film. Despite us having all this confirmation, Barricade never showed up in the movies, which was likely done because Travis Knight managed to convince Paramount and Hasbro midway through the film that the movie should be, instead of being a prequel, it should be a reboot, which it ended up happening, and my guess is that they wanted to distance themselves from the original Bay movies. Movieverse Brunt. Now, Brunt actually does appear in the movie universe in a Transformers game. I think it was a tower defense game from what I can remember. He's also carrying 10 sparks within him, so he's extremely hard to kill. This is the best picture we have of him, and yeah, it's not much to go on. Scrap Metal's questionable existence. Now my guess is that this is talking about how Scrap Metal somehow survived his apparent death in Revenge of the Fallen when they, you know, ripped him apart to rebuild Megatron. And Trans Studios made a video about it. I'm not sure if this is what this is referring to, but I guess is that it's questioning that aspect of the movie. Now we're in the deepest corner of the iceberg. There's barely any sunlight left and we're nearing the abyss. All the original 07 Decepticons were revived along Megatron. Now this is a common theory, one that hasn't been confirmed, but not only does Megatron get revived, but we also do see Grinder appear out of nowhere, which people have speculated that Grinder is actually a rebuild / reconstructed version of Blackout. We actually see a Bone Crusher appear in the Egypt fight, and we do see a version of Brawl appear later on in the movies. So this has led people to speculate that since, you know, all the 07 Decepticons were buried in the same place, maybe the older Decepticons also took the time to revive them and reconstitute them. Which it hasn't been confirmed, but it's quite a likely possibility. Movie Galvatron existed 5 years before Age of Extinction. In the game Autobot Stronghold, a tower defense game to promote Revenge of the Fallen, there was an enemy unit called Galvatron. So that pretty much makes Movie Galvatron's earliest known appearance. We don't have a clear look of this guy. This is the best you're gonna get, and I don't even know what I'm looking at. Hounds removed Red Cross insignias. Later after The Last Night was released, Hound's Red Cross insignias were changed. I don't really know why, but they were randomly. Voyager Starscream's cut features. I'm not too familiar with Revenge of the Fallen toys, so this one's actually one that I don't know about. If you know it, let me know in the comments down below. Studio Series Soundwave's original paint scheme. I'm not too sure about this one either. My guess is this is referring how in the original promotional photos, this guy looked more movie accurate, like in terms of the silver. Because when he came out, he just had this really plain gray color. I'm guessing that's what this is referring to. Drift's twin brother. Now, I'm pretty sure this is referring to in The Last Night, where we get that whole scene of Anthony Hopkins' character explaining the backstory of the Transformers on Earth. We actually do see an Autobot, or Decepticon, we don't know, who looks an awful lot like Drift, which has led people to speculate that Drift in this continuity has a twin brother. Which this one's actually probably true. Yet again, another one I'm not really certain about. I'm guessing that Brawn's vehicle mode is licensed much like Dino's, which means that producing toys out of this guy is a bit complicated. Or maybe they change the vehicle entirely, so they can get around that whole legal issue. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below if you know this one. Gold Stunticon Scout. Now the Gold Stunticon Scout is a model that actually does exist in the Transformers The Revenge of the Fallen in the game. I am not sure if this is like something that you can encounter in the game or if it's something that's there and it was never used. I wanted to find more information about this guy, but no such luck. Revenge of the Fallen toy line budget cuts. The Revenge of the Fallen toy line had several budget cuts, which resulted in a lot of figures, you know, losing articulation or certain features, or some even being outright defective. OG Meg is Black Mamba. Now, this is one that I actually don't know about. I'm so sorry I'm not knowing a lot of these, but this is in reference to a third-party scoring figure. I'm guessing this is referring to two different third-party figures being the same thing? I could be really wrong about this. I just know that this is in reference to third-party scoring figure. I just don't know the details about this too much because I don't look at third-party stuff. So if you guys do know about this, please let me know. Ken Christiansen's Seeker design. Okay, his Seeker design is the one that was used for the Revenge of the Fallen in the game. So basically that one Seeker that's playable in Revenge of the Fallen in the game, yeah, that was supposed to be in the movie, which is a shame we never got that. Also, strangely enough, one of his early concepts for the Seeker look an awful lot like the Bumblebee movie Seekers. Coincidence? I think not. Forgotten Constructicons. Now this is one that's fairly well known. I would say I would put this actually a bit higher on the list, but this is in reference to many Constructicons that never made the cut into the film. There's a lot of concepts out of these really wild and monstrous Constructicons, some which are kind of nightmare fuel. And I'm really glad that most of these didn't make it into the film itself. But this could also be in reference to certain characters that also classify the Constructicons, such as Bone Crusher and a few others. Now we're in the void, the deepest layer of the iceberg, and the endgame. Chances are that most of the stuff here you haven't heard from before, and if you have, good job, you're smarter than most people. So let's get going. Stratosphere's Lost Space Shuttle. This is reference to in Revenge of the Fallen, the Stratosphere toy was originally meant to come with a space shuttle accessory that would have plugged into the hole between his plane model wings that will serve as his rod model weapon. This made it all the way to the test shot phase, but this was ultimately removed for the final product. The final toy still has that hole in which the shuttle would have been in. Human Alliance Ratchet concept art. Now, the Human Alliance figures were these figures back in the Revenge of the Fallen days and even Dark of the Moon, where a Transformer will come with a human and they will have a feature in which the human could, combine with the Transformers to have extra firepower. There are actually early concept arts of Ratchet's Human Alliance toy, but like we all know, this never made it into the actual toy line itself. Massive Black Transformers 2 could mean a lot of things, like you're not being very specific. Now, this could, in my opinion, is in reference to concept art in which we see this massive, like silver and black transformer that's the size of like an aircraft carrier, or the big Transformers that was supposed to be this giant Kraken thing that I covered in one of my previous videos. One was an early concept art for the Fallen, and one was a concept for another big Decepticon creature that was supposed to appear in the film. Both were ultimately cut. Operation Skyfire, I will say it's more well known. Originally, The Last Night was supposed to be 2 movies. Operation Skyfire was the code name for a movie that was supposed to take place in World War II, and it would have involved Bumblebee and Nazis. Blackout was originally Soundwave. Now, this is in reference as to how originally Blackout was planned to be Soundwave instead. And if you look at some of the early Soundwave concept art, you can see that there's a bit of a resemblance to him in Blackout in terms of like the body design, the body style. Which explains why Blackout in the movie has the sonic wave things that those are more commonly attributed to Soundwave. PS2 Ironhide in cutscenes. My guess is that this is referring how in the PS2 game, Ironhide looks fairly different from what he does in the actual film. If you look at some images of how PS2 Ironhide looks, his cutscene design is different from his actual in-game model. Transformers Prime Directive script. Now, this is one that I didn't really know about, so I had to look into it, but this seems to be the original intended script for the Transformers movie, the first one, and was the working name for it. I don't really know much about it, so if you guys do know about it, let me know in the comments down below. Scrapped Core Mission. Now, I have no idea what this is referring to. I looked through Google, like a bunch of places, and nothing. I feel like this is referring to something very specific, and I just don't know which. So if you know it, please tell me in the comments down below. Sector 7 ARG. Now, this is one that a lot of people don't know about, and I actually didn't know about this until a couple of months ago, but for the original Transformers movie, there was actually a Sector 7 ARG, which led us to that famous, Transformers clip on Mars, where we see what we're supposed to be a Decepticon attack the human drone. ARGs are nothing uncommon for movies. The Dark Knight had an ARG, plenty of other movies do ARGs to promote the product and get fans involved. It's pretty fun stuff. Agent X was basically a character from the ARG. We don't know his or her identity to this day. Agent X basically leaked plenty of classified Sector 7 stuff to the public. And to this day, after Revenge of the Fallen, we have no more info about her or him. Unused Evil Bumblebee. Funnily enough, before Stinger ever was a thing, in the original Transformers the game, there was an Evil Bumblebee, which had a darker red color that existed in the game files. We don't know if this was a game exclusive thing or if the Evil Bumblebee thing was intended to be in the movie in the first place. But the fact that this happened years before Age of Extinction is kinda wild. Unused Pepsi payload. Now, I'm pretty sure Barricade24 made a video about this where he mods Transformers the game, and I'm pretty sure this is in reference to the game itself, where there's an unused Pepsi payload design to promote Pepsi, of course. My guess is that this was an in-game exclusive thing, but for some reason never made it into the final stages of development. Now, much like the title suggests, this is in reference to plenty of DLC content that was just cancelled from Revenge of the Fallen, the game. Tons of concept art exists of G1 looking characters and other characters that never made it into the game itself that might have been DLC later down the line, but unfortunately the game was discontinued and therefore none of these ones became true. Masterpiece Starscream was almost a QC disaster. Now this is in reference to how a reputable source in the TFW 2005 website got some info about the early Masterpiece Starscream. Basically told us that the figure itself was a disaster. It was awful to transform, the arms were like noodles and so on. There were so many things wrong with it, until it was fixed and changed. Masterpieces are painted less on purpose. Now I'm guessing this is pretty self-explanatory, but my guess is this referring to the fact that how Hasbro sometimes slacks off and doesn't fully paint their Transformers figures, like they leave some stuff unpainted or whatever to save on time and money. Studio Series Dino's production. Now this is one that a lot of people shockingly do not know about, and this is because Michael Bay's obsession with getting all of these really expensive cars means that there's all these legal boundaries and stuff that Hasbro needs to like get over to be able to produce some of these toys very accurately. Now sadly, the whole licensing for making a Ferrari is very difficult to get for Hasbro. So that's why Studio Series Dino took so long to release, and even when he did release, I pointed out that this is not a movie accurate Dino because the car mode is very different from what we see in the actual movie. Now this is referring to an internal concept art book that only Hasbro uses. This hasn't been released to public, and it's something that has been kind of leaked by credible sources, but it's a book that Hasbro uses exclusively for Transformers stuff, like for their concept art and whatever. We don't know much about that besides the fact that it exists and it's an actual thing. The Blackout Desert video. Now this is one that's not that well known, but there's a Blackout Desert video in which you can see an early look for Blackout in the movies, and you know, it's basically a very early render and it has a very different Blackout design. It's very interesting, and I'm probably gonna play some of that on the screen. The Lognut pre-production head is one that I don't really know about. Concept art of this guy exists for the movies, but I'm not sure if this is referring to something more in particular, or if this is just referring to the way Lognut's head looked, which, yeah, it's very weird. This is one that I also couldn't find much information on, but my guess is that there was originally a voice audition for the character of Vortex. My guess is that, if anything, it was probably gonna be in Dark of the Moon, because we do know that a Vortex toy does exist for Dark of the Moon, so if anything, he was probably planned for that movie. Now, Sabotage voice auditions is one that I'm not too certain on. From what I've seen in my research after I didn't know what this was, apparently, this could be referring to a lot of things. When I searched the whole Sabotage thing on Google, what I found is an article talking about how Michael Bay tried to sabotage Megan Fox's career, and then I found a more playful thing about how there was some lighthearted sabotaging by the part of Peter Cullen. I'm really uncertain about this one. I have no idea what this could be referring to, so if you know about this one, you know, let me know in the comments down below. And to end this Iceberg on, we have the Wei Yang arrest. So basically, there was this company that made KO Transformers, basically knockoff Transformers, and they were raided by basically the government. Many people working for the Chinese company were arrested for basically creating this knockoff Transformers toys, which were copyright infringing on Hasbro's Transformers toy property. This is one that a lot of people don't know about, and I'll admit I didn't know about post making this video, but hey, now you know. And yeah guys, that's it for the Transformers Iceberg. I'll admit that there was a lot of stuff to cover here. This video is probably going to take me a long time to edit, and there were quite a few things that I didn't know about. If you know the answer to some of the things that I mentioned in this list that I have no idea what they could be referencing about, or if I mentioned something wrong, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll probably ping your comment. Yeah, I'll definitely ping your comment, just so I can correct myself. There's plenty of these icebergs, some which are a whole lot darker than others, which I do plan on covering soon if this video gets enough support and likes and stuff like that. I plan to do a few more because, surprisingly enough, there aren't a lot of these icebergs for Transformers, despite there being for like stuff like Crash Bandicoot, Nickelodeon, and a bunch of other stuff. But these are pretty fun to make, so I might make more. Anyways guys, let me know, were there any of these that you guys didn't know about? Are there any of these that you guys would like me to make a video on, because I could always go more in depth onto some of these more obscure ones, because I'm sure there's a lot of you guys who would like to know more about the cancelled DLC for Revenge of the Fallen, or maybe some obscure Transformers concepts here like the original 07 Decepticons being revived, or maybe some more unused characters like the evil Bumblebee. Let me know about it in the comments down below and I'll try and get to it. So yeah. That's it for this video guys, hopefully you all enjoy, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay safe guys. Anyways guys, before we go, Shout out to our amazing Patreon, TrueBlue712, Stitch Productions, Stephanie Ballard, Christopher Prime, Predaking Hunter Plays, Mario Gordon, Allspark Studios, and huge shout out to the absolute madman himself, Jordan the Great, and to our even bigger Big Balls Patreon, XNooter23, who donated what I can only describe as a amount of money. I'll leave you guys to figure out how much. Thank you guys for your donation. It's extremely generous and extremely appreciated. It helps me keep the show going and feed Squeaker. Thank you guys for your support. I tip my fedora in gratitude and put on my Supreme Gentleman hats in your honor. Link to our Patreon and their channels will be in the description down below for you guys to check out. A lot of these guys actually do Transformers content, so it's worth checking them out, cause most likely than not, if you like my content, then you're probably gonna like theirs too. And if you guys wanna shout out yourselves, all you gotta do is donate to our Patreon. By donating to our Patreon, you get quite a few rewards. You get a shout out in my videos, you can collab in some of my videos, you can request your own video topic, exclusive roles on my Discord server. So yeah, it's a pretty good deal. But keep in mind that it's entirely optional, because freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Anyways guys, thank you so much for donating, it's much appreciated, and if you guys want to donate, you know what to do. And I will see you guys on the next video. Stay safe guys.